I bought this burned BMW 335i, and then we rebuilt it just to find out that the engine is blown. Previously, we stripped this car fully down and replaced the quarter panel due to fire damage. But then when we was gonna start it for the first time, we found out that it was blown. So then I bought another broken engine and hoped to rebuild it, but that was a huge mistake. Last episode we found out that the new block is toast. There was rust in the cylinders that we couldn't repair. So now the plan is to use the old block and rebuild the engine. I think the first thing that we will start with, we will measure and gap the piston rings and install them onto the pistons. Then we need to mount the crankshaft and measure the crankshaft bearing clearance. So now I will lube up the cylinders. As it says in the repair manual, the third groove oil rings doesn't have a measured value, but the second ring and the first ring has. So now this is the oil ring. There are 3 rings. This is the upper ring and the second ring. So the second ring, it has this corner missing, and that's supposed to look downwards. So then we will put the ring in like that, like this. Then we will use the piston to push it in so it's flush and straight, like this. And the end clearance for the second ring is supposed to be between 0.3 millimeters to 0.5. And here I have a 0.5 millimeter gauge. Now we can see that it kind of fits but doesn't want to go all the way in, so it's tight. But now at the same time, if I use a 0.4 one, we can see that it goes in and it's completely loose. So that's completely perfect. We don't need to do any kind of adjustments. Now we'll remove the second piston ring. Now on the first ring, it says stop on the side where it's supposed to look at the top. So here it says stop, so we'll put it in like this. That's in. And then I will push the ring in. And the clearance on the first ring is supposed to be between 0.18 millimeters and 0.33. Now here I have 0.3 millimeters, and it's the same. The 0.3 one, it kind of goes in, but it's tight. Then here I have 0.25 millimeters, and it goes in freely. So that's also within spec. So now I measured the rest of the piston rings. All of them are within spec, and we don't need to do any grinding. So that's, I guess, good. So I already installed 3 sets of piston rings onto the 3 pistons. Since these pistons are used, they're a bit worn on the middle part of the sidewall. You can see it's different color in the middle, and there's less resistance when you drag over your finger over it than on the side. There are some kind of grooves this way that are like oil passages. So what you can do to create new passages, take a bit of Scotch-Brite and you scratch it up in an X pattern. That's it. Now you created some new oil passages, so oil doesn't just run off while the engine is working. And the same on the other side. Now the first piston ring, the middle oil ring that goes on, because that's the one that seats the deepest in. And that's very easy to install. And now we have other oil rings that go on each side of the big oil ring. And there are no directions which way it goes, this way or this way. And also there's no way you can measure end gap clearance on the oil ring. There you go. Now the oil ring is in. Then we put the second ring with the groove downwards. And the upper ring where it says stop, looking upwards. There you go. And this is the piston number 6. Before we do anything else, we need to reinstall the oil spray nozzles. Now these are the bolts. Inside the bolts there's like a pressure release valve. So it's not always spraying oil. It sprays oil only when certain oil pressure builds up. Then it releases and then it sprays the oil. So then first thing, you take a little screwdriver or something and you check if all of the bolts have similar pressure on the release valve. There's a spring, you should feel the resistance. So you check if all the bolts has the same pressure. If they don't, you need to replace them. In this case, all of them seems good. Then I will take compressed air and I will blow out the bolts. And you check that air comes out from all 4 holes in the bolt, and it does. Now we'll blow out the nozzles itself. Now we'll install the nozzles into the block. 12 Newton meters. Now in the repair manual it says that you need special tool to align the angle on the piston squirters, but you really don't, because you can see there's little notches in the block and you just need the piston squirters to be just a bit past the first notch, and you just put them all around the same and torque them to 12 Newton meters. So now I will fit the bearings, which I have already opened from the packaging, because we already fit the crankshaft earlier to see that actually everything is straight. Now I cleaned up the crankshaft slightly. Now you can see that all the journals are mint. So the bearings in the bed plate are also installed. Now we need to measure the clearance using plastic gauge. So now completely oil free, I will put a bit of plastic gauge on each of the journals. Here you go. That's it. So now we'll torque the bed plate down using old bolts. And then for a final installation, we will use new ones. Firstly, the bed plate bolts are torqued to 20 from inside out. And then it's 70 degrees. So now actually this bed plate is the one that came with this block originally. Even though there was some damage on it, I did not want to change it because, well, I don't know if bed plates are built from factory to fit best with the original block. I would expect it to, so I did not want to take the chance and use the other bed plate with this block. Maybe something will misalign or something in that direction. Now we'll open the bolts again and remove the bed plate. Now as we see, plastic gauge is very wide. What it says on the manual, the clearance is supposed to be between 0.020 and 0.046. Now the widest on the gauge is 0.025, and we can see that this one's that. This one's a bit wider than this. That one is a bit wider. Same. Yeah, so basically this is like 25, the rest is 20. Exactly on the limit. So all the bearings are tight, it has tight clearances, but it's still within spec. So now what you could do, you can polish the crankshaft and take away a bit of material to make it more loose. But you can also run it like this. It's completely fine, it's more on the tighter side. But I mean, that's how it came from the factory. The crankshaft is completely stock, it was never spun on the original engine, and these are the standard bearings. I just spoke to the machine guy about it. He said it's completely fine, you can use it like this, it's gonna run fine. To say it this way, there are limits for this reason, and we are inside the limits. So now I'm just gonna add a bit of assembly lube. So now there are two ways that you can use to seal up the bed plate. Method one is you can use these injection ports and inject the sealant and wait until it seeps out from each end, and then it seals it. Or you can use this. This is sealant from BMW, Loctite SI5970 flange sealant. And you just use it as a normal sealant and you put a bead of it into the groove all the way around and you fill up these holes. Yeah, so I just kind of filled up the little spots for the injector ports. There's a bit excess on the corners, so I will take off a bit. Now I can put the bed plate on for the final time. Now new bolts, lightly oiled. And with one time I'm gonna install the lower bed plate bolts. These are actually aluminium. Just want to make sure that all the bolts catch thread before we can torque down the main bolts. Okay, so all the bolts seem to be catching thread. Now I can start with doing the main bolts. Now main bolts 20. And now all the bolts 70 degrees. That's it. The lower bed plate bolts are torqued to, well, the bigger ones all the way around are torqued to 15 Newton meters and 90 degrees. And the ones on the end, they are M8 on the ends, torqued to 10 and 90 degrees. So firstly, all the bolts here to 15 Newton meters. And then the bolts on the ends, 10. Now there's so many of these lower pan bolts that I have to actually mark 90 degrees each, all of them. Now actually the two small bolts in the back of the engine I will torque to 90 degrees. But the ones in the front, these two, I will not torque yet because I need to torque them after we install the front main seal. Because after we install the seal, we will add, I have bought an extra little upgrade. That's a little backing plate that you put here. And that prevents the same happening in the future what happened to this engine earlier. Is that the belt pops off and then it gets sucked into the engine and basically kills it. So it's a little backing plate that holds by these two screws. So we will torque these two later. But now I have torqued all the screws around and the crankshaft is basically fully in. Another thing, when we took the engine apart, I don't know if I said it on video or not, there's a oil pan bolt that was, well, stripped out, or broken, I mean. I'll try to drill a hole in it and somehow remove it maybe. I don't know if these bolts are aluminum or something, but I will try to make a hole with a punch. What's spinning? I don't have extractors and today is actually 1st May, so everything is closed. Maybe with screwdriver if I hammer it in. Yes! Perfecto. And also there is some sealant that seeped out on the ends. So I'm just removing it with the screwdriver and then cleaning up the surface while it's still not cured with, well, a rag with brake cleaner. So it's time to install the pistons together with the rod bearings. Now this is the cylinder number 6. Here I have the bearings. King bearings, standard size. Now let's remove the old bearings. They are worn but not that bad. Take the bearing, then we put the little notch in, then push it in place. First we will do cylinder number 1 and number 6. So now get the ring compressor. Now just make sure all the rings are facing 3 different directions. Road work right outside, so sorry for the sound. We will spin the engine over. There's a special tool that you need to put the rod in place. I don't have it. Then we clean the surface and we put plastic gauge once again. And now it's 20 Newton meters. And then it's actually 70 degrees twice. Now we can open them. Now the rod bearing clearance is supposed to be between 0.025 and 0.070. Here we can see that around 0.050, so exactly in the middle perfectly. And that one around 0.050 as well, so that's perfect. Need to clean off the plastic gauge from the crankshaft. Now I will push the rods down a bit and I will add some assembly lube. Push the rod up again. And then we take the new bolts, then install the new bolts. Good. Then I need to repeat the same thing for the other cylinders. Second and fifth cylinder, same, around 0.50, 0.50. Two last bearings, 0.050 and 0.050 as well. That's great. All the bearings for this engine are perfectly within spec. Done. So now we'll put cylinder number 1 in TDC. Now here I have the head gasket. This gasket seems that it fits. Now we'll clean the surface for the last time. Seems as clean as it will get. Let's put the head gasket on. When you're doing this, you have to clean out the holes so there's absolutely no fluid left in the head bolts, the head bowl holes. Now that is good. So these are the new bolts. They actually come already oiled. The washers, I have them mixed in here with this other stuff. In the repair manual it says that it's supposed to be oiled up only on the tread and on the head where the washer is. It's not that good access when the camshafts are still in place, but now when everything is out, it's very much space here. Now, first order of business, all big bolts, 30 Newton meters. These ones we're gonna torque at the end with just 22. Then we do all the bolts on the head, well not the front ones, but all these ones 90 degrees. The third step, 90 degrees only the big bolts. So that's these bolts in the middle. Yo! Oh, this is gonna be heavy. The last step, all the upper bolts, 45 degrees. I'm not even sure how I'm gonna do that. Good. Then the last step, the 4 smaller bolts that we put back here are torqued to 22. Done. The head is fully torqued. I also cleaned up these 2 little strainer filters that sit in these holes onto the head. It sits like this. Oil pump sits like that. Pickup sits like this, I think. First 10, then the long bolt 180 degrees, And the two small ones 90. Never mind. It's supposed to go this way. Now the oil pickup, firstly 4 Newton meters, and then it's 100 degrees. Then I can't find torque for the rest of the bolts, so I'm guessing it should be the same because it's holding the same thing. Now I'm gonna just reinstall the camshaft position sensor. On with the high pressure fuel pump. Now this is a very common problem on N54, and this is what people call, well, Mickey Mouse flange. Well, because it looks like a Mickey Mouse. From factory, this flange comes as plastic. That's why it fails so quickly. That's why I ordered this metal one, and it fits in here. One of the engines had the metal one, one of the engines had the plastic one that we took apart. But I'm just gonna use the new one. Yeah, I guess I will use the old one because the new one doesn't wanna fit. And then finally the coolant sensor. Perfect. So here we have the timing chain complete. But I think first we will put the oil pump chain module together with the new chain. So here's the new chain. So let's take the new chain and just put it on roughly. Then we take the oil pump sprocket, put that in. Then we'll take the high pressure fuel pump sprocket, put that into the unit. So now on all N54 engines, you can just put the sprocket on and then the hub and say you're good to go. All N54 engines has these little spacers in between all the sprockets and the hub. So you can see the hub still has the spacer on, and that's how two of the spacers look. And then there's this spacer. This one goes on the hub. First we can replace the one on the hub. It's like pretty tight on. Seems like there are some visual scratches here on the sealing surface, but it's literally nothing you can feel. It's 100% invisible. So now we take the new friction plate, it's called. Then we put this on the hub. Here you go. Sprocket goes on this way. I will remove the friction plate from the sprocket. Like that. So now both of the friction plates are exactly the same. And that goes in this way. And now to hold it compressed, there is this little thing, but I broke it, so I had to get a new one. And that pushes the sprocket up. That was pretty damn tight. Now on the real OEM it said that I need this little plastic thingy. I'm not sure, it's probably just to hold the timing chain tensioner in place. I think it's easier if I don't put it right now. Take the chain out. Then we fit this big thing this way. There you go. Then the new sprocket wheel. So now on the main timing chain, the collar is supposed to look towards the crankshaft. That's this way. Here we have also the two bolts that hold the unit up and the guide rails. So first I want to put in the oil pump chain. We put this thing in. Now I'm just gonna put the bolt so the sprocket doesn't fall out. Now the little bolts are torqued to 4 Newton meters and 45 degrees. That's around 45. Now remove the old guy rail. I just had it put in place so I don't lose it. So now I will put the chain in. I'll put the hub to hold the sprockets in place. Never mind. I think it's better if you put it in later. So now I'll put the upper rail. Then I will put the lower one in. Now the upper guide rail to cylinder head 14. The lower guide rail to block is 20. Then I will put the plug back. And I will add the little plugs down here. So now I want to okay. I can't turn it more because we don't have the flywheel on. We don't really have 100% timing on it right now. So now it seems that this big center bolt on the high pressure fuel pump and the vacuum pump is torqued to 65 Newton meters. No, it's not ideal. So I'll hold it like this. The oil pump sprocket is 20 Newton meters firstly. And then it's 45 degrees, which is basically half of a quarter. Now I can't really put the camshafts in yet because I haven't received all of the rings on the camshafts, which is a common problem on N54, and I do want to replace them. And we can't really do anything more with the timing since the camshafts are not there. All this is just to embed it in the metal. All the bolts 8. So then the longest bolts in the back are 180 degrees, 90, and the smallest ones 60. Also we installed the oil drain plug. Here we have the clean oil filter housing. I took this from the new / used engine without the dirt in the oil. I'll put the filter later. Then I will install the clean Vana solenoids. So I cleaned up all the lifters, so I'll reinstall them. So now N54 camshaft has these kind of rings, camshaft ledges what they call. They're in steel and they are what holds the oil pressure inside the vanos thingy here, and if they leak then there can be a bunch of problems with the power and stuff like that. So BMW has these ones, they're updated ones. They're not steel, they are like softer. So we will use these ones because what was on the car is still the old one. That is how they look. They are like connected, the old ones. You can kind of stretch these ones. So now this is the exhaust camshaft. So I finally got the 2 more camshaft ledges. So now we just need to remove 2 old ones and then we can install the camshafts back again. Now lube it up. Now it does expand a bit when you put it on, but it will retract itself back to its original seating. So what they actually do is that they are like oil rings. Since the camshaft sits just like this, here's where it spins. And here we can see is an oil supply hole. This hole comes down from the, right here from the Vana solenoids. And that's what controls the Vanas. So then when the Vana solenoids control the oil pressure comes up through here into this whole space here, and then into the camshaft, and then all the way to the front, to the camshaft sprocket. Then the oil pressure goes into it, and that adjusts the timing so the camshaft spins a bit. Which way it needs, I'm not sure about that. Then I'm just gonna reinstall the intake camshaft. I'm just gonna put the bolt in to hold it lightly. We'll put it fully in later. So the way a timing tool kit works is you lock the flywheel with this one, then you use this tool here, then you lock the cams. Because the cams, they have these flat surfaces. But since it has these flat surfaces, that means you can put it either this way or this way. If you do, that's awful. You can bend the valves and you can do all sorts of things. But here it says in the manual, when the engine is in TDC and the flywheel is locked, both of the lobes in the rear of the engine must look outwards. So we see that this cam must be around like that. The lobe is looking this way. This one is completely off. And I turn the cam. And it's on. Then we have these long screws to hold it in place. This we'll put on after because it's a bit tight right now because the cams are loose. So we can see that the cylinder number 1 is at TDC and the tool is over the cams. And just as it says in the manual, the lobes are looking outwards. Now all of these bolts are 8 Newton meters. Now just tighten it one by one from the middle out so it presses down evenly. For now I'm gonna remove it because I can't get access to the bolts to tighten them. So my freaking torque wrench broke. So OG fans, remember this bad boy. I'll need to go and return that thing. Randomly just broke. So after 8 Newton meters, 60. Good. Now I will put on the timing tool. Now I need to fully put the Vanos gear in place. Then the Vanos timing. These two little bolts that hold the timing chain module to the head. So now to cylinder head it's 14 Newton meters. Well, since we don't have a torque wrench. Now since this timing kit is for many different engines, we need to choose the one that fits for this one. So here, N53 and N54. So I bought this off eBay, I think. This is Vanos timing. So we see that the holes for the bolts are here. And now these little notches are supposed to line up with the holes in little covers. Now this is a very important step because if you don't catch the timing for the Vanos, the engine is not gonna run. Camshaft position sensors measure on these little brackets so they can see at what position it is, and that's what lets the engine start. If you don't do this, the engine is not gonna run. So now I'm just gonna put two little bolts to hold this thing in place. Camshafts locked, Vanos locked in time, but the crankshaft is not in time. So now we don't have enough space on the engine stand to put the flywheel on and lock it with the pin. So we will need to lift the engine up, remove this bracket, put the flywheel on, lock it, put in the tensioner with the toolkit. Then we will know the engine is in time. Then we can torque the camshaft bolts and the crankshaft big boy bolt. Okay, now remove the little plug. So we do need to spin it a bit. There you go. You can see the crankshaft is locked through this hole. Timing chain tensioner provided with the toolkit. We will insert it fully in. Don't need to go hard, just so you can feel it's tight. And now I can see and feel that the chain is as tight as it should be. So now I want to tighten the cam bolt. Now I want to put the engine down and torque the hub bolt. Carpet, everything. Okay, at least my big torque wrench works. So now the center hub bolt, firstly 100 Newton meters, and then astonishing 360 degrees. Can you imagine? Good old pipe. Now the Vanos sprockets, 20 Newton meters and then 180 degrees. Now we'll remove the tensioner, the one that is provided with the toolkit. Now I will install the proper tensioner that is provided with the new timing chain. That is torqued to 55. So now remove the bolts for the Vanos timing. And then I will remove the locking pin. Then I will turn the engine over. Now we'll lock the flywheel again. Flywheel is locked. The cams lock perfectly and the Vanos slots in nicely. So we have perfect timing. Remove the locking pin. So now we'll remove the flywheel again. Before we put it back onto the engine stand, I want to install the rear main seal. Usually these seals have these little notches for the sealant to come out from if you are sealing the bed plate through this way. But I bought L-ring seal and it doesn't have that. So I'm not sure why, but it seems to be fitting. So I will just put a bit of silicone on the walls, exactly where the blocks join. Just a bit here. I will put some silicone spray on it, just so. I don't know, I think that came out perfect. I think that came out pretty good. So now I have this seal here, the cap. There was a few scratch spots, so I also put some sealant in these spots. Okay, so now that is in. Now the main front seal. So this one does have these little grooves that you're supposed to align like this. So exactly on these spots I will put some Rinso seal, just like that. It was very hard to put it in. And then this thing. So that sits just like this. By the way, I got red because there was no more colors left. Looks good. Now this is the valve cover. I cleaned it up as best as I could. The valve cover was very dirty because this is the original one. The other one got destroyed in the shipping. But I spent a good long time cleaning it. I washed it again, and then I cleaned it with brake cleaner. So I think at this point it's as clean as it's gonna get. Now this is the new valve cover gasket. Now the bolts are actually torqued to 8.5 Newton meters. Then I will reinstall the starter. So that's gonna be it for this video. This is already a long one. And in the next video, we'll need to put on more accessories on it. Turbos, injectors, fuel system, stuff like that, gearbox. And then we will put the engine in and I hope we will get it started. Since a few people in the last video said that I should start a Patreon, that's what I did. Originally, I wasn't gonna do that, but well, this car, all the projects, everything is costing a lot of money. And from YouTube, I basically make none. So if you guys would like to support the channel and help improve the content, improve the projects, I just do want to buy bigger projects, more interesting projects. So if you guys would like to support the channel, I will leave the link for the Patreon in the description. I'm currently also working on the other E92, which I can't seem to fix, but I need to get it fixed so we can get rid of it and buy other projects. But that's gonna be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope to see you in the next one.